Dmitry Orlov went to Boston at the trade deadline last year, played really well for them. Of course, they flamed out in the first round. So he signs a deal with Carolina. Here's the interesting part.
Yeah, it's only 2 years in length. Chris Johnson just reporting the AV at $7.75 million AV. Chris Johnson, right beside me. And the term is really fascinating. And this is about a player betting on himself, going back into a market in 2 years, or, you know, resigning with Carolina. But when the cap goes up over the next couple of years, obviously Carolina looking for some D. We know that they've been involved with San Jose and some Erik Karlsson trade talk. We know that they really want to extend Brett Pesce, but haven't been able to do that. What does this mean for Pesce's future? I will also tell you that even though the league would not allow the Tony DeAngelo trade to go through last weekend, that Philadelphia and Carolina still plan on going through with that trade around July 9th, when it's been more than 12 months since that deal last year. So a lot of D pieces going around, but a major signing here for Carolina.
Well, and look at this situation for Orlov. On this day, he's seen Radko Gudas, older than him, get a 3-year deal in Anaheim, right? And so I think that gave him comfort in playing this into his 30s. It's going to be a $92 million cap, most likely, the next time that he's doing a deal. And so this is a little different kind of signing than we usually see on this day.
He's 31 years old, and it's interesting because in hockey, so many of the players want term, and more term. And in the NBA, it's been quite the opposite, especially with the star players. And that's why it's going to be fascinating to see when Austin Matthews does a deal with Toronto, or assuming he does do a deal with Toronto. Is it going to be 3 years? Is it going to be 4? Is it going to be 5? I can't imagine we're looking at a 7 or 8 year deal. And to the Orlov deal, 2 years in Carolina, they'll obviously ante up many years for players that are going to be a big fixture, like Aho is going to get his extension done here. So he'll get like a 7-8 year deal, whatever the case may be. But Tom Dundon, as owner in Carolina, doesn't like to give too much term in those situations on a day like today with a guy like Orlov, who's 31 years old. And Orlov, as you pointed out, CJ, I mean, 2 years from now, the cap will be much higher. Yeah. And who knows how things work out in Carolina? Maybe there'll be another team that will want a hired gun for big money.
The guy's covered it pretty well. He's taken the 2-year term to get back to market when the cap's way higher. I'm curious, though, you know, Carolina, who seems to be pretty set on defense and one of the best defensive teams in the league, why are they going to get such a high-priced defenseman? Obviously, the Tony DeAngelo thing is likely going to fall through. He's not going to go there. But they have Brady Shea and Brett Pesce going into the last years of their deals. Yep. So now it is a bit of insulation, depending on what happens there. Also opens up the opportunity to trade some of those guys to address other needs. I know Brett Pesce has a ton of interest around the league. So it's almost a good player going to a good team, but also set up future moves and gives them flexibility. Carolina's flexible. They're smart. They don't love giving term. Aho might get it, but not many other guys will get it. And they're keeping it short.
Somewhat shocking that the 2-year deal. I mean, Bobby just mentioned it, hockey players, you toss out a big deal with the injuries, uncertainty, you never know. I'm always going for the long-term deal. I am happy with the Carolina Hurricanes because I spent a lot of time there, and this particular signing would never be a part of the equation. Bringing in Brent Burns wouldn't be, because guys didn't want to go there. Now they're in the mix and they want to get good players to help them get somewhere. That signing was always somebody else. That was Colorado, Detroit, the New York Rangers, and they were a part of it, bringing him in here. I think it's big for that organization. Roddy Brind'Amour is much like Peter Laviolette. I think he learned a lot from him. Always wants better players, get better players. And they got a good D-man.
Well, and they've got a D-core as is, and I know you're mentioning the insulation there, depending on what happens in the future. But, you know, he's a top 4D, but he plays a ton of minutes as well over 22 minutes a game. I think it's the most of all the UFAs left on the board. So here's a guy that not only can contribute that way, but he also can move a puck. And I think that's really important. When you play real structurally strong, you got to find ways on retrieval to be able to move it and get it out of your zone, whether it's transport or that first pass. And I think Orlov is a nice acquisition, although I am surprised. I was thinking more like a Buffalo. I know Clifton's there, but a Buffalo or even a Columbus.
You know, that flexibility, you're looking at it from both sides. He gets back in the market where there's more money. They remain totally flexible.
Yeah.
A goaltender and 3 forwards that are signed for more than 2 years on that team. That's it. They can clean the slate. And maybe it's looking at a team like Vegas that starts from scratch and can build. Seattle starts from scratch and can build. They can start from scratch.
This list of free agents, you know, a lot of talented players, but they weren't earth-shaking players this year. Does the signing of Orlov change any balance in that division? Does it tilt anything Carolina's way?
Weren't they the best team already?
I meant playoff time. You know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, but no, I think that takes one of the best teams and makes them still one of the best teams.
I think there's a lot of parity in that division. You throw New Jersey, the New York Rangers, The Carolina Hurricanes, it comes down to a hot power play, a hot goaltender, and which guys can get it done. I think there's a lot of parity.
That's the bigger question to me for Carolina. I can't quite wrap my head around why they now have 3 goalies signed to one-way deals.
Well, Kochetkov still doesn't
waiver exempt.
He's
but he still
exempt.
makes $2 million. Like, you still got to pay him.
Right, but you're going to put him in the minors, and you're going to let him totally germinate down there. And at the trade deadline, you're going to move one of the other two.
That feels unlike Carolina, just to pay a guy $2 million to play in the minors.
But maybe they've decided to be unlike Carolina.
Yeah.
7.75 is a lot as well, but the term makes it real.
I guess I would say I would think they had a chance to win this past year. I know they didn't. They lost.
That was a weird
badly.
series.
It was a weird series.
Yeah.
It was much tighter than a sweep, the tightest sweep you've ever seen.
They had 2 of their best forwards out, too.
And give them Svechnikov and Pacioretty back in the lineup.
Now you're scoring goals.
And maybe they win that series. So I think it's just keeping on the path they're on as one of the best teams in the league.
Are we likely to see more of these little 2 years and 3-year deals, especially with the guys at the top of our list?
Yeah, I don't think there's a question about that. And it works on both sides, though. These players are rolling the dice a little bit on themselves. We've talked about security. You just said you're taking a long-term deal anytime. When I played, you could extend in the middle of a contract. I never played more than 2 years of a 5-year deal, and they'd come back and say, we'll bump up the next 3 and give you 2 more. And you'd say, of course I'm taking that. I love security like that. So it is a little bit of a roll of dice on the players' part, but they're going to come back into the market at a flush time.
You wonder if Killorn, as an older guy, maybe looks for term. He might get more than 2. If you wonder about Tyler Bertuzzi trying to come off a hot playoffs with some injury, he might be looking for term. But I think situations like there might only be a handful of guys that might get 4+ years. Everyone else will be low.